Buenos nachos, amigos, and welcome to Record Breakers, a music podcast where a group of friends gather together to share music with each other an album at a time. It's like a little book club for music. I'm Petey Brave, and here with me is my team, my squad, my crew, my gang. We've got David.
I think this is my first video recording in my new apartment.
Nice. We've got Drew.
Hello, I have a kitten.
Mm-hmm. And we have as our new guest, a new occupant of the fourth chair, we have Victoria. V, how you doing, V?
I'm doing okay. It's really hot this evening where I am, so probably sweating.
Yes, I know that. I've got my. I'm lucky. I've got an air conditioning, a little split level air conditioning.
They're talking about air conditioning and being warm right now, Drew.
Yes. I've got my air.
Maybe we should move into the show.
Yes, I've got
what
my
do
air
you
conditioning.
think, Drew?
Well, considering it snowed yesterday,
I'm just saying.
Saturday.
I'm just saying. I've got my air conditioning set to 69.
Nice.
Yes. We're here to talk about music, not weather, and our north versus south weather fight.
How dare you?
We're here to talk about an album. We're here to talk about music. Of course, this is the first spot in the rotation. It's my pick, and I've decided to bring back an artist whose debut album I brought onto the show not too long ago, and whose debut album was, I think, probably my favorite album of 2020. Period. I think it was also universally loved on the show. And she came back with a follow-up album, a sophomore album. We're talking about Rina Sawayama and her album Hold the Girl. Let's talk about expectations. David, what expectations did you have coming into this album?
There's an old saying that I remember hearing from a guy by the name of Rudy DeSantis. It's that you have your whole life to make your first album. And then you have a couple of years to make your second. And there's always this feeling of what's called a sophomore slump. And in this case, I was expecting something that might resemble that because it does happen from time to time, but it often doesn't. So I was expecting something from Miss Sawyama that would be a pretty strong follow-up, because I remember saying on the episode where we did her debut album, it was the most I'd enjoyed a pop album in years. So I was looking forward to this quite a bit, and I was hoping that there would be no sophomore slump as Drew's cat gnaws on his digits.
Yes, exactly. Drew, what expectations did you have coming into this album?
Well, I forgot we had done this person before. But it's something where I knew it was going to be a pop record. I knew she was from across the pond, as it were, in more ways than one. She's a very weird connection of dots as far as where she is from. From Japan to London, I believe.
Yeah. Was born in Japan, immigrated to London at age 5.
Yeah. So I was expecting something good, because usually when PD brings on anything that is not from the US, it has never disappointed. But other than that, I was going in relatively blind. Now that you say we heard it before, now I'm remembering this. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that record. That record was really good.
Yes.
We will see if my thoughts on this one compare.
V, I'm curious. What expectations did you have coming into this album that I told you about like a few days ago in class?
Yeah, so I had no expectations going into this album because I had never heard of this artist before. This was my first encounter with Miss Rina, and I have to say that I don't really listen to a lot of pop music. I am an EDM person through and through. I've listened to a lot of other genres of music, but EDM is usually where I sit. I just went to the Chami concert most recently. Also went to a jazz concert. Shout out to 8-Bit Big Band that performed down here in Miami. But pop albums are not usually my thing. And this was a pleasant surprise. This album was a great listen.
Yeah, let's talk about this album musically, because this is Rina Sawayama, as I think we discussed when we first had her debut album, is she's been described multiple times as, I think if you look at her album on Wikipedia, she's just been described as a musical chameleon. One of the things is one of the big things about her is she pulls from a lot of different sources. She definitely pulls from like pop, dance pop, rock. Here she kind of pulls even from country pop. She pulls from like her 2000s sources. Definitely in her first album, one of the biggest things we got is she basically meshed up like all of the things that she grew up in the early 2000s with as a fellow millennial. She like Britney and Christina and Britney, Christina, and Korn, and like on the first record. But this one, it also includes a lot of that stuff. It includes a lot of pop, a lot of electronic, a lot of dance pop, a lot of pop rock, a lot of rock, like great guitars thrown in there from a production standpoint, and the instrumentals. It is anthemic, it's bolsterous, it's vocal slayage, if you will. Like, this is definitely vocal centric on a lot of things, but it is also even more personal than the first record. The first record had a lot of like diving deep into kind of like her upbringing and her reckoning with her upbringing, her family life, and her sexuality and things like that, and the community, her chosen family, as it were. The great anthem. She explores even more of that here, like anthems for communities, in particular the queer community, like great anthemic tracks, great tributes to her mom. You go from like in the first album, she definitely had moments where she kind of like had a little bit of like a fighting back against her upbringing a bit, and kind of reckoning with her strict upbringing and what that did to her. But she takes moments to pay tribute to her mom and what she had to go through to raise her, and a lot of things like that. It's just the musical mix is just beautiful and well done, and it has that great gravitas.
Spoiler: Petey liked it.
Yes. I love Rina, but I'll talk about it at the end. Let's go to you guys. David, how would you describe this album musically?
Well, not to pull from everything Petey just said, but I think that there were some moments on this album that had a little touch of adult contemporary. That was one genre that I don't think Petey mentioned. There was a little bit of adult contemporary in here. There was something that was a little more mature in a few songs rather than your standard modern pop music, which I thought was really interesting. I think that this is more of a somber album than the first one. It has a bit more of a serious tone in some points. And I'll express my opinion on that a little bit later.
Mm-hmm. Drew, now that you're settled back in, how would you describe this album musically?
So one, like a lot of the pop music that PD brings on from various parts of the world, the voice was super powerful. There was a lot of genre bendy stuff, which I actually really enjoy. it's very dance poppy to me. Like there is a 90s early aughts pop feel to it. I mean, at points she's even name dropping like Britney Spears and stuff. So like makes sense where those influences lie. But also you had like also seeing as she grew up in London, like hearing bits of Spice Girls and bits of like Euro techno sort of feel to it makes sense. If you would have told me this was plucked from like 1998, I would have believed you to a certain degree. But also there is a very modern sensibility to the production. There is a lot of, in my opinion, you get a separation within the instrumentation that sometimes didn't come from pop music, and still at times doesn't. Pop music can feel very dense, and this didn't. And when I say dense, I mean like just sonically dense, like there's too much going on, like they're trying too much all at the same time. There's this sonic wall effect almost, in my opinion. But this, like, everything was spaced well in the mix, everything you could hear, and I think that's really cool. And also, yes, the lyrics did tend serious, but there was some funny bits to it. And it almost felt like there was like a tongue-in-cheek biting, like satire almost at times. Like a, what do you think? Like this is supposed to be, like sort of look down your nose at it, sort of thing. I think that's cool. And I think that all came together pretty well.
V, how would you describe this album musically?
Yeah, so I want to circle back to and focus a little bit more on the modern themes in the album and the modern touches in the music, because I think in particular what I noticed about the album is the genre changing. That was what made the album stand out to me in comparison with other pop albums that I've heard in the past. Notably, the last pop album I listened to was Lady Gaga's last album, so it's been a minute, but if this is where pop is going, I think it's coming a long way. There is something about being able to see this album like in the 90s that I wouldn't be familiar with. That being said, for a modern listener, I think that the genre changes is very much fitting for like a Gen Z type of, mood board, like, very much we have access to all kinds of music, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music. We listen to everything, right? It's no longer the world where I have one CD and I listen to country music, or I have 3 CDs and I listen to Nirvana and Aqua and Britney Spears, right? People listen to a lot of different kinds of music. That being said, there was also familiarity in the tracks for me. And when I dug into her a little bit, I realized that she is under the same record label as the 1975, which I'm more familiar with their music than I was with hers, but I can definitely see where the alternative touches are coming in and where some of the like smoother tracks are coming in. When I say smooth, I mean like in the rock sense of there isn't really a heavy standout track. I mean, you have the one track at the beginning, This Hell, right? But I think everything kind of like mellows out towards the third quarter. So there's a lot of different influences that are definitely present here. And I think it really resonated with me in particular.
Good find on that. Now that you say the 1975, that is now ticking a lot of boxes in my head. That makes a lot of sense.
Dirty Hit is the record label, and the only other artist on the Dirty Hit label I'm familiar with is the 1975, but that is, when I heard that sound in some of the tracks, I was like, oh, I've heard this before, and it was interesting to see that.
Yeah, and it's from the people that she collaborates with that are probably a crossover, and her production team, and from being the place. Let's talk about key tracks, because like when I think about like some of the key tracks, if I were to like talk about some of the tracks that kind of define this album. It starts off fairly early. I mean, you start off with like something like "Hold the Girl," which is one of the early singles, and it is beautifully anthemic, and it's fun dance pop, but it has this like anthemic, like colossal feel. It also has like some great moments, and the vocals are just beautiful. And like the there's some little touches, and then it goes into like This Hell, which is Rina's like go at a country pop song with like glam rock like feel to it. As it says on Wikipedia, a country pop song with glam rock riffs. Quote. The even like pointing out the first lyric is "Let's go, girls," a la "Man, I Feel Like a Woman," which reminds me of I think there was a performer that performed to that song at the drag brunch I went to a couple weeks ago. It was fun. That song is that like it's also very anthemic. It uses like the country pop sound really well, and it kind of touches on like this celebration of community and people dealing with the kind of like dealing with, hey, people are telling us we're going to go to hell, we're going to go to hell, we're going to go to hell together, we got each other, the devil wears Prada, and he loves a little drama, like it is fantastic, and with some great like references. You also got some songs like Forgiveness, which is a really beautiful showcase of Rina's vocals, and has a great like emotion and intensity to it, with some like when it gets into those like rock sounds later into the song, it really does it really well. And Imagining is just this like song that, especially if I'm playing this album driving home from work at like 10:30 at night, it's just a song that is just great for like dancing to in your car in the middle of the night, like where you just need to like blow off some steam. Like it's just the epicness of it is just a beautiful thing. Yeah, David, what would be some of the key?
I wanted to touch on that too when we circle back to Imagining, because I think that's my favorite track on the album.
Mm-hmm. David, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
I really liked This Hell because it had a different feel than the first two tracks. And when I heard This Hell, it was like, this is the Rina Sawayama I remember. And I really dug it. Imagining as well, I think that's probably going to be the track that we all talk about a little bit. Hurricanes, track 10, and To Be Alive, track 13, the final track. But I will say, I think this entire album really hits another gear when it gets to, I'd say, about track 7, Your Age. And the second half of the album really, really clicks.
Mm-hmm. Drew, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
Well, I wanted to start with Minor Feelings into Hold the Girl, because to me, what always made like a fun Bond song to me was leaning on like old world and then like diving into new. And if you take these two combined, since Minor Feelings is such a short track in the grand scheme of things, it's like a minute 20 or something like that. Hold on, I've got Spotify up, I could look. Like 2 minutes exactly. Like, so that in the Hold the Girl, I feel like feels like that like almost modern Bond movie would be. This Hell, as was said, there's a little bit of like modern pop country to it, which is cool. It obviously throws a little bit of Shania Twain, but then name drops Paris and Britney again. That like what I was saying about like having the tongue a little bit in cheek, a little bit of a funny, but in a like pointed sort of way. Also like a rhythmic, like almost hip hop influence to it as well. This makes sense as the single, from what I remember reading. So this being the lead single makes completely sense. And then actually I'm going to mention Frankenstein, because as the bassist, I feel like I would be remiss if I did not mention Frankenstein, because I thought, while being super, super, super simple as far as the bass line goes, was still prominent and forward in the mix and was fun. So
V, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
Yeah, so I wanted to talk about imagining as well. But I forgot exactly what it was that you said that really like caught me off guard. I'm pretty sure that when I heard imagining, I Googled it immediately, like who was the producer on this? Because imagining sounds very much, it sounds very familiar, but then I realized it's not that. What sounds familiar about imagining is that it is almost like an early 2000s anthem of like a broken relationship, right? It's almost like something that Lady Gaga would have sung had it have been written back then. And the lyrics are simple, but they are also like explaining an emotional relationship, so you can read into them. You can like infer a little bit from some of the lyrics, like what is happening between, I'm assuming the people involved in this, especially she mentions like light a cane and like, um so, and then there's like French in it. Like it's very much an album that recalled that like monster era Lady Gaga in me, right? So I think that track is what stood out the most to me. And I also was caught off guard. This for me was surprising when Send My Love to John came on, because to me, Send My Love to John is, I don't want to use the word soft because it's not a soft track. It's definitely a strong inclusion for the album, right? But it is just like a smack of country after you've just been through Imagining, Frankenstein, Hurricanes. It's like a hint of Taylor Swift, right? And you're expecting something heavier after Hurricanes, right? So that it can keep going and then kind of like drop at the end of the album and there's satisfaction. But the fact that it drops before the end of the album, it almost feels like I'm on a roller coaster, and it calls my attention back just before the ending of the album, right? Because at some point you start to like, oh, I'm listening to it, but I'm like doing something else. But then the inclusion of that track, especially where it is in the album, I think just kept me listening to get to Be Alive, which is, the final notes in To Be Alive. Again, her voice really stands out to me across the entire album, but those final vocalizations at the end of To Be Alive are like, like it made, like I felt the ending of that song. So the fact that I get called back to attention for such a strong ending, I think those are the three tracks that stood out for me.
Yeah. Let's bring it back around the horn, talk about some conclusive thoughts. David, what would be your conclusion on this album as a whole?
I'm not going to call this a sophomore slump album, but I will say that this album didn't hit me quite as hard as her first. There's some really strong tracks on here. And I will say that there was some adult contemporary influence that I didn't see coming. There was some big epic anthemic pop that I didn't expect. It reminded me of almost, dare I say, Celine Dion with some of her influence. And that was really interesting. It was a lot of very big pop is what I was calling it. And she carries it well. She doesn't have the big booming voice like a Celine Dion or a Whitney Houston, but she carries the album pretty well overall. There were some tracks on here that I really, really liked, and there were some that left me feeling like she was trying to sound a bit too much like everybody else. And I think she's at her best when she's being really, really unique.
Mm-hmm.
And this was a good second album. It did not hit me as hard as the first album.
Mm-hmm. Drew, what would be your conclusion on this album as a whole?
Well, as a whole, this style of pop is usually not what I tend towards. It's fine. It's fun. And like when it's on, it's a good time, but it's not like what I seek out. That said, it was a damn good time. Like I was listening with Amber the other night, and she even like got into it. And usually like when I put something on, like that, even the stuff I bring on, she's usually like, why would you, who cares? This, you're like, oh, this is fun. Like she got into it.
Can we get Amber on the podcast?
That would be funny.
I will tell her that she's always invited. I've told her before, but now that she's being named specifically to come on, we'll let her know.
Mm-hmm.
That said, this is something that like you can put on in a room, I think, of people of a certain age or younger, and nobody's going to be mad about it. Even if it's not everybody's cup of tea, if that makes sense. There was a lot of inventive stuff in here, and there was a lot of cool stuff in here. I think David is right that it does sound like she is aping at times other people in other genres. I think there's a certain art to that and a certain fun to that, but sometimes artists do that and like do it better. And sometimes it's like, okay, I get it. I get what you're trying to do, but like go back to the other thing. And I can understand that. I like a little bit of both. So maybe she does an album next time that's like half and half. We'll see.
B, what would be your conclusion on this album as a whole?
Yeah, I think that, so I haven't heard her first album. Now I'm going to go back and listen to her first album because I think the consensus is that her first album is better, which I'm excited for. I think that there were a couple of moments in the album. We didn't mention the title track of the album, which is Hold the Girl. That moment did feel very, and I said this name before, I'll say it again, which I think is a compliment to her vocals, right? But it felt very Lady Gaga once again. And I think I agree with David that when you lean into, right, the other parts of pop culture, right, and we attempt to get closer to what is selling as opposed to closer to what we are selling, which is our brand, right? I think that is where it gets a little bit muddy in the album, but the tracks where you can see that there was a lot of care put in, like This Hell, like Imagining, those tracks carry the album for me in particular. And I think that, again, I'll repeat myself. If this is where pop music is going, it's exciting because it's not a genre I'm usually attracted to. So I think that all in all, great album. Would listen to it a third time.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, the Rina crafts a really cool blend of sounds, really cool blend of pop and dance pop sounds that and mixes in a lot of stuff. This is a good follow-up. I think there's a lot that gets explored that adds to her repertoire. I still love her debut, and it's still like an album that I could listen to front to back, no skips, time and time again without just over and over, and it's a beautiful album. And this one is a really fantastic follow-up to that. There's a lot of really great stuff that she explores, a lot of really great ideas that she follows up on, and her vocals are amazing. I should have asked my sister for the fan that we bought that she bought at drag brunch, so I could have brought it here and waved it around, but I didn't. But just know that I was we were snapping. It was just a fantastic album, fantastic vocals, fantastic talent, and just supremely tight and well made and more personal, and does a great job of following up on her debut. And I'm so looking forward to seeing more from her and seeing what follows up, and the fact that she's in the new John Wick movie and she's getting into acting, which is amazing. Good for her, because she's cool and she's really talented. And I love seeing her thrive. Yeah, there's not much else to say without repeating myself. It's just great. All right. Now we get to the main event of the evening. Now that we have all our thoughts, our full thoughts into this album, we get to the main event of the evening, the moment we've all been waiting for, our haiku reviews. I may not have told everyone about haikus.
Drew only just found out.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. We're going to do some haikus. 575. Some may be improv. Some may, we'll see what happens. David, what is your haiku?
No sophomore slump here. Good, empowering pop songs. Strong second effort. Mm-hmm. That was what I haikued when I was making dinner right before the show.
Exactly. What I put together just now, a little bit before the show, or actually, no, I go last. I forgot. Drew, what is your haiku?
Lovely pop vocals with a mix of old and new, refreshing and fun.
Mm-hmm. V, what have you got? What have you got?
Here we'll do a fun one.
Mm-hmm. Siri fell down. I'm trying to prop up all my action figures. There's Eddie. There's Eddie Kingston. I got an Eddie Kingston figure. He was on clearance at GameStop. Can you believe that?
Power to the players.
Mm-hmm.
Very cute.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna do some of the names of the tracks.
Oh yeah.
As Catch Me in the Air, Hold the Girl, This Hell, Forgiveness. That's too many. That's way too many. Holy Till You Let Me Go. I think the second line broke it.
Yes. Good enough. There you go. All right. My haiku. Great sophomore effort that's even more personal. A new pop queen reigns. Mm-hmm. Those are our thoughts on Rina Sawayama's Hold the Girl, as I hold these action figures in front of the camera for no reason. You can, of course, find it on our Spotify playlist, Play Record Breakers, the home game. Do your due diligence and your due diligence. You can find it on both playlists, one with the episode slotted in, one without. On that Spotify playlist will be next week's record, and it's going to be provided by David. David, what have you got for us next week?
PD Rave, should I pick the album that I had on my list next, or should I pick the album that I just thought of while we were recording the show?
I like spontaneity, personally.
Okay. We're going to be picking an album from 2002, the year I graduated high school, from a band from Sweden, Eskilstuna, to be precise, called Pain of Salvation, and the album is entitled Remedy Lane.
Mm-hmm. All right, so look forward to that. That'll be next week, and this is this week. And you can, of course, find us all over the internet. David is at Call Me DJM. Drew is at X2X. I'm at PD Rave, most places except for Twitter. Now I actually deactivated my Twitter, so don't bother about finding me there. But I'm PD Rave everywhere else. The show is at 4 Record Breakers still there because we still log in. I still announce the episodes. RecordBreakersPodcast.com, Rebelli.net for listen to other shows. Rebelli TV on YouTube and on Twitch. I should figure it off camera. Check us out live. You can watch the episodes of the podcast. You can watch us do D&D on Through the Tomes. Watch me play Witcher with Daisy, friend Daisy, coaching me, and other fun stuff, including That's a Neat Card, my card opening stream where I open baseball cards and Dungeons and Dragons cards and Power Rangers cards and Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy cards, but mostly baseball cards. Like from either a lot of 2002, a lot of 90s, a lot of fun stuff. And I play a soundboard, and I play... No. And then, just do the... Yahoo! Yeah, and then... Oh, shit! Holy shit! It's all good times, and I'm pretty sure none of the guests heard that, because I'm sure I don't have that volume...
we heard it.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I saw that. But yeah, thank you for being with us. Check out all the things. Check us out where you find podcasts, do all the things. Until next time, hasta los huevos.
Oodle toot.
Annyeong.
Live long and prosper.
Fighting.
Thumb out. Thumb out.
Thumb out.
There we go.
I know how to do it. I don't. No. If you like the 19... Whoa. Someone was not happy. If you
okay, we won't do it. No Star Trek stuff. Okay.
Oh, she's saying nice.
Jeez.
She's saying...
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.